Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Old School Q&A. I'm joined by Mod Kieran.
Yo.
Mod Husky.
Yeah.
Mod Gambit.
Hello.
And Mod Flippy.
Hello.
I've got Mod Tide on the chat. He will be joining us over shortly and swapping with Mod Flippy. And I'm your host, Mod Sween. Let's not forget Mod John, who is working hard behind the scenes, making sure the stream goes on without any issues, hopefully. Usual announcements and stuff. So firstly, an apologies for missing last week's Q&A. Initially, we planned to bring the Q&A forward by a day because of a meeting we had on Wednesday, which took a lot of people out of the office. That meant that the Tuesday Q&A would have coincided with lots of very, very busy people on Tuesday trying to do their normal jobs. So then we had to cancel the Q&A. Very sorry, but we're back today and every other Wednesday. Now that makes it sound like every other Wednesday alternating. Every Wednesday going forward, for more clarity there. Exclamation mark security. So last week we offered an update in terms of where we are with improving our own security offerings. We explained why we're a bit behind where we'd like to be. So we've been sustaining like a multi-month attack on our login servers, which required a lot of managing. But we also explained what security features we'll be implementing and a clearer idea as to when. Exclamation mark leagues. So Twisted League, the first old school RuneScape league will be arriving on the 14th of November. Exclamation mark leagues to learn more about it there, and we'll cover some questions in a bit more detail and show you the rewards that pass the poll as well. Exclamation mark free PC, that's the number 3. So earlier today we published a revised statement regarding third-party clients. This one had lots more input from client developers and some clients were given advance notice as well. We know that the first statement raised more questions than it answered, and so that's what we tried to
Thank you.
We've got some more questions coming from you following the statement, which we'll get to shortly. Last announcement, Infernal Cape bans. So tomorrow morning, the anti-cheating team will be banning 471 players who either bought or sold Infernal Capes. So what's happened was, tech-wise, they made some strides identifying these players. So some people may have bought a cape a while ago and subsequently got on their own since then. But for fairness, we're going to remove all of them anyway. Right, straight into the questions. Like I said, I'm going to start off with third-party client stuff. First question, quite general. Why are you doing this in terms of this referring to like our stance and our approach? So, like I said earlier, the initial statement, even though we tried to answer questions, it just raised more. You had more questions. So what we've tried to do is just kind of put your mind at ease. We don't want to unfairly punish anybody, but we also do need to protect the game's integrity. There's lots of talk about like, why don't we just build a new client or improve our existing client or partner with X client, which we might still well do. Like, we're investigating a lot of the potential routes, including a lot of your suggestions. But whatever we decide to do it'll take a while to get to that point and reach that point. So in the meantime, we've got to do what we're doing now, which is kind of get the game to like a healthy status quo, make sure the game integrity is pivotal until we do what we want to do with our own client. Are you just fear-mongering is a question I've seen asked. I think the opposite. Like, we do appreciate that the first blog raised more questions than it answered, and lots of you were worried about using what you perceive to be quite harmless plugins. So that's what we've tried to resolve this time around. We don't want to fearmonger, we want to do the complete opposite. If you're just a normal player using like quite a popular common third-party client, using stuff that's widely used, like, I'm just going to say one, like ground item markers, for example. We don't want you to worry. It's the other stuff we've outlined in this blog. How have you created this list? So we've been working with some client developers, and we gave other client developers advance notice to kind of go through refine the wording, refine what features their communities like to use. And what we're doing is we're kind of trusting that the conversations we've had should result in the prohibited features being removed from those clients.
Yeah, the goal is to have ideally as clear a list as possible about what's unacceptable. That's quite difficult. As you can imagine, looking at some of them, it's quite hard to say. Some of them were very blurry in the last one. Even now, obviously, there's still questions coming up from you guys in the chat, and we've seen it already on social, that there are still a few that are quite ambiguous about exactly what's not allowed. So please do keep letting us know where those issues lie, and we'll make updates to the statement as we go, most likely, just to clarify and fix wording where it needs doing.
Yep. Can we even detect X feature or Y client? So there are some features that we can't detect right now, but work has already begun on improving our detection capabilities. So that's why we're telling you as early as possible. And then that obviously will come hand in hand. That's just, if we do detect stuff, then we take in-game action. For other things, we can utilize, we don't want to get to that point, but stuff like legal action. But ideally, just working with these clients and having the features removed is the ideal result. Some more questions about it. So some record times for content, such as Chambers of Xeric, Challenge Mode, Theatre of Blood, etc., were set by players using some of these features. Can you reset the records or add a new record, like a post-features rule record?
That's a fairly difficult one because we don't have a full list of this person used these features back then when that record was set to say that we might end up removing records from people who set them perfectly legitimately. So there's no intention to change anything right now, but it's not to say we wouldn't do something like that in the future. It's something we've not actually had a conversation about yet. So
yeah, and if we did do something like that, I would like to have some way to say here were the old records and here's the new records. We wouldn't want to remove someone's feat regardless, you know, because a lot of these people put a lot of time into chasing these records regardless of the tools they used.
yeah.
Cool. Will you poll updates to your official client? So we haven't decided what we're going to do with our official client, what the long-term solution is yet. So we're kind of still in this short to mid-term strategy of what we're doing now. If we do decide to do something to our official client, I think polling what features and plugins we add to it is probably the best move. So we haven't committed to that yet, but it sounds good. And then, like Kieran said earlier, lots and lots of questions about specific language and wording about the certain rules. So yeah, we're going to revisit all your feedback, offer additional clarity in the statement where we possibly can. Some of the common things I'm seeing are manual tile marking versus automatic visual markers, Cerberus, the change affecting colorblind players, hiding the defense option in your attack styles to prevent unwanted defense XP gain, menu entry swapper for like things you consider to be harmless, like banking Leprechaun. So we'll get to those and update the blog and publish any updates as we get to them. That is largely in terms of the third-party client questions. I know lots of you are like, can you talk about X feature, X, Y feature? But I think the best thing to do there is to collate everything you're suggesting, update the blog accordingly, and then let you know. We won't be taking any account action until we've got a proper clarity in place. Cool, let's move on to more positive information, positive news. Mod Flippy, you had your first bit of content in game last week.
Yeah.
Well, how was the reaction? What's next for you?
It was great. I'm really, really happy about the event, actually. On release day, I had like Kieran coming up to me and you were like, are you nervous? And I was like, no, I'm pretty good. And then someone else, can't remember who, but someone else came up and they were like, hey, what's up, you nervous? And I was like, well, now I kind of am. But it went well. It actually landed on a good note, so I'm really happy, I'm really proud, and I'm super happy seeing that a lot of people enjoyed it. So yeah, seeing a lot of spookier sheets running around.
The spooky sheets, that's not completely wrong. The spooky sheets are a great addition to the game.
Yeah. No, it's been great. I'm really happy about it. Nervous breakdown.
So the event story was like largely all your idea.
Yeah.
Are you kind of happy with the fact that that's probably one of the most positively received things? How old school it feels.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I must say, like, I got a lot of help from the team as well, in the refining process, in the testing process and stuff. So I got a lot of help, and it was an effort from everyone.
I think it's great. I think the original concept for the whole event, the fact that two goblins are trick-or-treating and they think they're dead, but they're not really dead. Yeah. I think that's hilarious, and it's so fitting for.
It's just so stupid that it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the ending cutscene is, speaks for itself.
Yeah. And now I'm working with leagues. I've been doing that for quite a while now, but yeah, I've been working kind of on and off with it, and now we're in the balancing phase. I'm sure we're gonna talk more about that, but yeah.
Now we get you full time.
Now. Yeah.
Exciting.
Cool, yeah, so I've got lots more questions about leagues, which we'll get to later on. But for now, we'll say thank you to Mod Flippy for joining us.
Thank you very much.
He will be replaced by Mod Tide. And if Mod John, if we could get the Gauntlet or the Zolcano drop rates up, which Mod Lenny kindly shared last week. Is there anyone who's a bit smarter than I want to talk to the community through the drop rates and what they mean?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things the players have noticed is that corrupted, if you can do it, is significantly better. It's not even close. Even if you're failing maybe 1 or 2 an hour, you should still probably be doing corrupted. I think that, yeah, I just think that I don't know where I'm going with this point.
I think on that point, the Blade of Seldor in particular, players were quite surprised when they saw these stats. But it was always the intention that it should primarily come from the Corrupted Gauntlet. We always wanted it to have a chance from the regular, but it was never meant to be the main source for farming it. Like you say, if you get good enough at the Corrupted that you can do it consistently, then yeah, that really is where you should be trying to get it from. That was always the plan.
And it's a difficult thing to balance, right? Because you don't actually need gear to get it. I mean, most of the things you need in game, you need to acquire a certain amount of gear before you can even attempt to go and get that item. But this is just do a quest, go for a chance at it. So I think it almost warrants being a bit rarer. Mm-hmm. Unless, of course, you've got the skill to put in and consistently do the corrupted gauntlet runs.
Cool. Maton, can we see these Zolcano drop rates?
I did see a lot of confusion about how these exactly work. I know I wasn't the dev that worked on it, but essentially it's kind of just saying your number is somewhere in that range, depending on how well you did, and that's I think it's based on like the damage you deal. So there's more people, less damage you deal, the lower your chances. But obviously there's like more people getting rolls at it then, and that's the concept to understand.
Anything else to say on these, or should we crack on?
That about covers it. Do more damage, get better drops.
Yeah.
Nicely simplified. Cool, thanks, Mod John. All right, on to the questions. 14 minutes in. Apologies for taking so long. There always seems to be lots of announcements to get through lately. First question is, can we look into how stragglers are handled during Theatre of Blood? Currently, if the group starts the next room while someone's in the previous room, the person in the previous room is kicked out of the theatre. Why can't that person just be teleported into the next room instead? I've seen so many people kicked out of the theatre because of trigger finger syndrome. I really can't see any drawbacks to this besides denying someone supplies after Sodex's leg.
This has happened to me before, so I know exactly where the player's coming from.
You're too slow, aren't you, mate?
It's because I was learning TOB, and like it was one of my first KCs. Well, it wasn't because I got kicked out.
Do you need much? Look, come on, you don't need much PVM skill to click on the door in time, do you?
Well, I guess.
I've been on the other end. I've done that to someone, and it's the worst feeling ever.
Right.
Is there any reason we can't just teleport them into the room?
There's no guarantee you'll be able to teleport them. You might not be able to get access to them. But I'm sure we can try.
I think maybe if we make a warning that it's going to kick someone, like, I don't know if it does already do it, but at least a very clear one. Because even if you just put the normal standard box, people are just going to space bar, press spam.
Is there a reason we can't let them just carry on anyway and go through the door?
Why we need to close it?
So the room's already started, so the fight's in progress. Is there any reason somebody else can't go in the room and enter the fight later?
Don't know.
I suppose if you've got a player who's particularly bad at a given boss, they're going to reduce the number of deaths they get. But even then, it's not really advantageous to do.
No, it's true. You could leech like that and get a kill count.
Yeah.
You get no points. Like, you get no points towards your drops and stuff. But you could get to the end, get a kill count. I guess that's the only difference. But
yeah, I think if it did drag them into the next room, it's probably the best solution.
Cool, so we'll look into that. More of an opinion-based question here. What does the polling situation look like behind the scenes, and did hiding the results have the intended results? I don't think we had an intention with hiding poll results beyond
been wanting to do
them.
The right thing.
Yeah, wanting to do the right thing. I mean, you've been telling us for a long time that was the right thing to do. Privately, I think a lot of us all agreed that it was the right thing to do. It just took a long time to do it, unfortunately. What I did notice was that, so previously a poll would be decided, let's say we launch a poll on Fridays, we try to do that. Then it would be decided by like Saturday, midday Saturday. What we're seeing now is the potential for change over the course of the weekend or early into next week. So we can see poll results as they're active, and we do check on that. But yeah, we didn't really have any intentions beyond wanting to do the right thing for you, so it hasn't changed much. polling situation generally. I think we're always looking at ways that we could improve it, whether that's improving access to it, making it more accessible across the game, rather than having to go to a poll booth. But similarly, we don't want to like spam you with it, because then people just might end up voting poorly with a yes or a no, just to get it out of their face.
Yeah. Did a number of votes on a poll gone up since we
I
hit
think
them?
so, especially
Like, I'd have
after we made
expected
the
that.
change. But I think even longer term afterwards, it's settled quite higher than the average before.
Yeah.
So, which I guess is an indication that players believe more in the system now that its integrity has been, well, improved.
It's interesting because obviously all the stuff we've pulled since we did it, it's not stuff that we've pulled previously, so you can't really compare it to see how it would have done beforehand and afterwards. But broadly, it's like results have sort of followed what we'd expect anyway from previous similar content. But one time, like it was about a year and a half ago now, I actually dove into the whole poll results, like of history of old school, and a lot of questions ended up in between 73 and 77%. So they were a lot of them were really close. That's interesting, isn't it? Why are they all so close? And obviously it must be related to the fact everyone can obviously see sort of where it is, and the fact that as soon as somebody hits 77% plus, people are just like, well, it's passing, I'm not going to bother voting no anymore, I'm just going to leave it. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely been a lot more higher passes, like high 80s into 90s, because people are just like, I really want this in, so I'm voting yes. I don't know because the players don't know if it's currently sitting at just below or if it's way above.
Right.
So
yeah, I would be like, I think it's much more accurate to do this. But I am interested in something you mentioned, Sween, because Ed was playing with a mock-up of this, of the idea of bringing in polls to like the interface. So you've got the account management tab right now. What if we stuck the ability to access your poll from that, sort of wherever you are, rather than having to go to a poll booth? How do people actually feel about that? Should we whack up a straw poll? You want to do it, Flippy? Have you done a straw poll before? Should we add the ability to open the poll, open a poll from the account management tab?
Don't think I've seen a single no yet, so I suspect it's going to do
I see
well.
one. And now people are going to say it because you said
Well, yeah,
that.
now they will.
I saw
but
3. I was counting.
Yes,
but
no.
Also in polling, we are looking at working with the likes of YouGov and Ipsos Mori, just to kind of do an audit of our polling system, just to see if we're better serving the wider community. There are things like niche groups of players who feel like they're not really represented because it requires a 75% pass rate. So we're going to look at that kind of thing as well.
Serious business.
I think we've got a straw poll coming, and whilst that's happening, we'll crack on with the next question. So now that Mod Maz left Jagex, is the Fossil Island boss that's meant to use rare fossils, which are useless at the moment, ever going to be done, since it was Maz's project and design?
We still have Mod Maz's design for that, so it's not to say we couldn't follow it still. But it's not a project that's been on the actual roadmap. It's quite an expensive project, and the rare fossils are actually really hard to get at the minute. So my broad feeling on it is we need to come up with a design that really helps to suit that, or makes it so you can actually play it enough. Because I think the rare fossils take so long to get. I know probably at this point a lot of people have that, a lot of them accrued. But if does it make sense to spend 3 months on a boss fight if people are going to fight it once every year or 6 months if they spend that long on Fossil Island? So I'd be keen to probably do something a bit smaller myself, come up with a use for them. But I think the main thing is they have a use, and right now they don't.
So let's revisit the use of rare fossils. It might be that we deviate from Maz's design for a boss. It could still be a boss, it could be something else. But yeah, we know they're quite useless, and some of you probably do have quite a lot by now, because it's been, 18 months perhaps since it was released? Cool, so we've got the straw poll results in. Should we add the ability to open a poll from the account management tab? 74% of you say yes. 19%, well, it's down to 73% now. 19% of you say I don't care, and 7% say no. So if we were to put that as a normal poll format, the I don't care would be skip. I think that would pass the 75%.
yeah, Flippy making us do skip maths on stream.
Problem is, I don't know if the community are actually voting by any other means other than it's got to say 73. That'll be funny, won't it? So, if we were going to do it, we'd do it for an actual poll, I expect.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Can we get an NPC to tell us our total ever Chambers of Xeric points? There's an NPC that does this at Wintertodd, so it seems fitting to have it for Chambers
Is
of Xeric
there?
as well.
There is, yeah.
So I imagine if we were to do this, it couldn't be like retroactive.
Same as usual, couldn't be retroactive. So
That seems
sorry,
cool.
but yeah, if we were to do it, we'd have to start the counter from now.
We could have the NPC who does it taunt the player if they're well over the expected points for a T-bow as well.
Yeah.
We'd say, oh, you've got this many points. Where's your T-bow?
And that player would say, I don't care because I bought one. Track uniques too. Okay, people seem like that's like quite positively received. So
Doesn't the collection look track uniques?
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about. Oh, number of uniques maybe. But you say you just add them up, right?
Yeah.
cool. Okay, well, we chat seemed positive to that, and so do we. Moving on. Could we have a rotate 90 degrees and rotate 180 degrees options added to the compass? Or maybe just look west or look south? Sometimes it's useful to be able to move the camera to south, west, east or quickly in certain situations. Zora and Lavas come to mind.
I'm not sure why not.
I'm sure the players would tell us.
I think for that to be actually useful mid-fight, it would need to be keybindable. I can't see people actually going to the top right of their screen away from, like up from their spellbook and that to actually do it in a right click, which might be one way to do it.
I think the way I imagine it is you would right-click the compass and you'd set what the left click is. Normally it snaps north, right? But you could change the snap to, well, whichever degree or angle.
But if you wanted it to be like 3 different things for different parts of a fight, say one time it's facing towards Lord from one side, the next time it's facing another way, you'd probably want it keybindable, and I don't know.
I mean, I can understand some people want it to be exactly north or exactly south. So yeah, you can use the middle mouse wheel and you can move it really quick. But if you want it to be exactly east, that's quite hard to get without us writing it directly in code.
I wonder if being able to snap the camera like that so quickly has any other skilling like implications as well that we're not thinking of.
I don't see why it would, to be honest.
No, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Well, what I'm seeing is the chat don't want people to be lazy, and we shouldn't cater to that laziness.
Yeah.
Okay. Can superiors from the Ironworth Slayer dungeon have guaranteed crystal shard drops? Right now, slaying there feels pointless, and it feels like it would fit thematically to have superiors have the guaranteed drop, similar to the catacombs. It doesn't have to be a ton, maybe like 1 or 3 or something, or maybe some range which is weighted towards higher end for higher combat level monsters.
I think this question was asked not long after Prif came out, and the answer was, let's give it more time to see what the data is like. You know, how often is it used? Would it be too powerful? That sort of thing. Personally, I'd be in favour of it. I agree that slaying that dungeon doesn't feel very worth doing. You can get shards already in quite a large supply from doing things like Zalcano and Gauntlet, so there's no need to go to the dungeon to get the extra shards, which is the main point of doing it, I feel. So I feel like that could be looked at.
Yeah, I agree.
Now that there's, say, players have got their hands on it and know how it feels a bit better.
Cool. Can Seracnis have her respawn timer reduced? 30 seconds is much too long, and the meta for high level accounts is to hop between kills. This saves 20 seconds per kill, since you have to wait 10 seconds to hop from being in combat, and the hopping meta makes accidental crashing very frequent at the boss. Chaining the respawn timer to 15 seconds or lower would help stop these issues, and would aid the original intention of the boss, which was for low to mid-level players have a boss fight.
I think I originally had it 18 seconds and changed it, and I can't remember why.
Okay.
But there's no reason it can't be quicker if that's what people want. You don't really need that long to loot, so sure.
I understand why the player is asking for this, but I don't think it will have the effect that they're claiming it probably will. I think what it will do is make it more convenient for high-level players and then attract more of them. So we might actually be making it tougher for the players it's aimed at.
I think it's already got to a point where we have enough worlds and you can find a Seracnis world pretty easily. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
And I think it's just those people. Low-level players don't actually. It doesn't make a difference, right? It's only the high-level players are killing it quick enough that it's actually more efficient to hop worlds.
Right.
If you're killing it in like 3 minutes because you're a low-level player, waiting a bit longer isn't actually that much extra. But if you're losing half your kill time, not half, but obviously you know what I mean, and that's a bigger deal. We can just change it. I'm open to that. Would we follow that, or is it just something we would do?
So somebody mentioned in the chat that we did similar for KBD.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see whether we polled that. I imagine we did. It seems more of a qual change.
Yeah.
Right, I've got some questions about the Nightmare of Ashihama. A few of them we've already covered, but I'll ask them again. At Roomfest, you called it a group boss like Corp, but is the difficulty and time to kill comparable to Corp? Or is it more like Next and raid bosses?
This is more like in terms of the actual mechanics that you kill a boss, it dies, you get loot, it respawns, you kill it. It's in that it's a grinder boss, not like a boss where you're going to go into a full raid. In terms of difficulty, I don't know how you can compare it, to be honest. It's so hard to compare. I don't know. I think Corp is probably actually a fairly decent guess at a comparison in terms of difficulty, in that you can take a group there and you can deal with it quite easily. But if you go in a really small group, it's a challenge. But Corp is, in terms of mechanically, Corp is quite simple mechanically in that it basically just hits you high and has that the little core, which is the one thing that it really does that's mechanically interesting. This boss will have more engaging mechanics, like probably more like the recent bosses we've had.
I'd imagine when we design it, we won't make it so you can just have 100 people or a full world there, one-shot it to get loot, wait. There's probably going to be something more intricate than that. And I think that Corp is our go-to for judging the standard in maybe kill times, maybe drop rates, maybe something else. It's a good comparison. I don't know if we will follow it exactly, but it makes sense to compare it to Corp.
No, you're not going to have to count to 3 to kill it.
No, I'll veto that mechanic.
I think similarly, we see lots of players talk about wanting to maybe incorporate having to use mage to kill a boss and avoid using like bosses with high mage defense so they can be easily farmed by the likes of T-Bow and stuff. So we keep all that in mind. Bear in mind, it hasn't passed the poll yet, hasn't been polled. So let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Actually, no, we're going to go hard on counting. We're going to make it so you have to pray range on every prime number and pray mage on every other number. Learn maths, kids. It's finally coming in use.
All right, moving on. Can you look into changing the crystal pickaxe to only use charges when mining and not attacking? Right now, it punishes you for upgrading your pickaxe when you do the Guardian's Room in Chambers of Xeric.
I think we put that one in the backlog. We sort of agreed that, if you're not using it or getting the benefit from the effect, it shouldn't use charges. Seems fine.
Yeah,
cool.
I agree.
So already on that and expect it in a poll coming soon, I guess. Next question is, I'm curious why crystal armor is so heavy. It weighs more than black dragonhide, Carol's and Armadil ranged armors. Is there a reason for this? My instinct is probably not, because players do point out the discrepancies in weight after we add new items.
That implies we think a lot about the weight we put on items. And for the most part, it's just like, this will do.
Yeah.
That's about right. So if you think it's too high and it's for what
Rock
it is,
says it's made out of heavy crystals.
Rock coming in with the forehead.
if you were wearing a full crystal plate armor, you'd probably be, struggling to run. So I get it, but
I think the idea is that obviously ranged armor traditionally is lighter, and people imagine that it's like crystal is supposed to be light. I think in my head canon, I would see it probably should be heavier than black dragonhide, because that's just literally leather. It shouldn't that shouldn't weigh that much. But maybe I see Carol's, all the studs should be maybe a bit heavier. It feels like some more rooted armor.
The thing is, the dragon leather is very heavy. Like if you get a full invent of that, your run runs out very quickly. But with crystal armor being like I think with the elves, I always imagine like a nimble. Obviously, it's got the agility requirement and that. I would imagine it to be lighter and more easy to move around in. But just like Skullby, something there is said. Crystals literally rocks, mate. So there's that argument as well, right?
It's magical rocks, right? You got elf singing and stuff that changes properties. I don't know.
Okay, that discussion went on a bit longer than I expected it to, but moving on. When will we see a high-stake Last Man Standing weekend with the new Last Man Standing rework? Mod Rock, you're in the chat. When would you like to do it? I think we can just do it anytime, right? Technically.
I can't remember the exact details, but I'm mostly sure it's just you can turn it on and off at any time.
I think it'd be pretty cool to do that. I remember talking about it when we were going through the design and saying that'd be pretty cool with the mechanics that don't just focus on who can prayer flick best. I think that'd be pretty cool to watch high stakes.
Okay, so let's look into bringing back, bringing back
in terms of
high stakes.
in terms of other sort of what's the other part, like other modes for LMS or
like other brackets and presets.
Yeah, obviously we've seen a lot of desire for doing that. It's something to potentially explore in the future, but it's not currently on the schedule to be done at the minute.
Rock says he needs a little bit more testing to be done to be $100 sure.
You're not getting paid $100 right now for doing that. Look, you tell you what, everyone from the community give Rock $100 and it'll be up in no time, let me tell you.
So while we're speaking about Last Man Standing, let's talk about Bounty Hunter as well. So it's currently still in the beta period. Mod Gambit, what is up with Bounty Hunter? Are there more changes coming?
Yeah, so in this week's update, we're changing the beta even further. So last week in the post, you may have seen a very small section saying we're thinking about a hotspot system. So lots of credit to Modash for this one. He's been working with the community, getting their feedback and ideas, and implemented a hotspot system sort of at the drop of a hat, really. So what's coming this week is 13 areas of the wilderness will rotate, so each one will be active at a time, and whilst you're in those areas you'll get extra bonuses and benefits for killing your target. So at the moment the standard number of points you get are 3, 4 or 5 for a target kill, based on your kill streaks, but you'll be getting triple those points if you kill your target while in the hotspots. There are also benefits for killing your target if you're on a kill streak and in the hotspot. So for a kill streak of 2 or more, your opponent's emblems, which would normally be destroyed and upgrade your own, they will upgrade and you'll get them in addition to your own being upgraded. And if you're on a kill streak of 3 or more, all of your own emblems will also upgrade, not just the one. So huge bonuses if you kill your target in the hotspots. That's it in a nutshell. We're adding some other stuff as well, like adding a few more tasks that Mod Tide has worked on, as well as a couple of tweaks to the existing ones. So that's the idea in a nutshell. I think we're going to need to tweak and balance it a little bit. It may be a bit too powerful. I think I was talking to Modrock about this earlier with the emblem upgrading. So we're going to put it out there. Obviously it's still in beta, so we'll see what you guys think and sort of tweak accordingly. But yeah, that's all coming tomorrow.
That's cool. What else tomorrow? I have a big cake. Is that a surprise? I might have spoiled it.
A big cake.
There's a big cake coming. So today marks 1 year since Old School Mobile was released. How incredible is that? It's flown by. I remember the panic this time last year of trying to get it out the door ready and stuff. And now we just take it for granted, like it's always been a thing. Anyway, to commemorate the 1 year anniversary of Old School Mobile, we are, how's best to describe it? We're turning the Varrock fountain into a giant cake, but rest assured you can still use it for fountain purposes. That was tested and developed.
It's a very interesting setup, but you can get slices of cake from Varrock, so look forward to that. We just had cake. I just had cake from our canteen.
I didn't. By the time I got down, there was none left.
Oh, you've lost out there, mate.
I did.
Some good brownies as well.
And I missed out on Mod Shawnee's leaving cake as well. I just got it.
Oh, that was a gorgeous cake.
A good one.
So creamy, soft, and just amazing.
Sucks.
That's going to be clipped and taken out of context, actually, isn't it? That was really poor wording. Yeah.
Okay, so
Did we mention you can get a slice of cake from the big one in Varrock Fountain?
Kieran did say that, yeah.
Changing the subject.
Kieran did say that.
Okay.
All right, so to cover Bounty Hunter updates Bounty Hunter updates coming tomorrow to update the beta with hotspots and some changes to the task systems. Also, a big cake in the middle of Varrock, replacing the fountain, but it still is a fountain. It's like a cake fountain.
I did see a few people in chat mention the whole hotspots thing could be botted. I know we've got a 50 combat requirement on that.
Yeah, so there'll be a minimum combat of 50, like you say. Usually it's 30 to compete in Bounty Hunter, but for the hotspot system it'll be 50 plus. And also you'll have to risk a mysterious emblem of any tier, I think, to benefit from the bonuses.
Yeah, just a few extra deterrent measures to help.
Yeah.
And it's on beta right now, so
yeah, absolutely. And like I say, we're going to be trying to spot any gaps and plug them in as the beta, continues to run.
Yeah.
Cool. Davis Malone in the chat has asked, can you make Bounty Hunter kills a requirement to vote in Bounty Hunter polls? So recently we had a little discussion as part of the Old School team as to what we want to do with polls and how it affects PvP, but also the wider community. So some people mention adding like PvP kills as a requirement to vote in PvP polls, but we thought about if we did want to go down that route, instead of adding like an arbitrary number, like you need 20 kills in the wilderness or Bounty Hunter, blah, 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 what if we make it more like a activity meter based? So you must have been active in PvP since the last poll or the last month or whatever to be able to vote in the next one. And then we could also add the same thing to say PVM, like you must have gotten X amount of boss kills or raid completions in the last however long to be able to vote in upcoming PVM content. Similarly with skilling changes, like you must have earned X amount of XP since the last poll to be able to vote in the next one. So I guess what that does is, it's not about trying to force content through for PvPers, because we don't want to do that. The right updates need to be added to the game. So what we spoke about was more about, should we ask the subject matter experts, should their votes matter, not just in PvP, but also in PVM and skilling as well. So expect us to talk to you more about that. And I think a good avenue for doing that, Mod Kieran, we've got a big annual survey coming to the old school community towards the end of the year. So a few years ago, we kind of got into the habit of annual surveys once a year, and we talk to you, I mean that's what annual means, sorry. We talk to you about everything, like do you like the game content we're adding? What game content do you want to see added? We can talk about polling, talk about PvP and PVM events, that kind of stuff. So I think a big section on polling would be the best way to see what you say and to posit and propose our ideas. Similarly, next month, December, should mark a return of the monthly blog. Mod Kieran, do you want to talk a bit more about that? I would otherwise, but I've been talking for ages.
Firstly, let me just add the point on the annual survey.
Okay.
Well, specifically the poll stuff. I mean, it's controversial. I mean, I think it's a massive topic, obviously, and that's why we want to make sure we get your input directly on that and ask the whole player base through a survey. Even if we do go down this route, and that comes out as the option that people want, it leaves open quite a hard question of how do you draw those boundaries of like, what is PVM content versus what is skilling versus what is PvP, because some things are blurred, right? If you add a new PVM boss and you get an item that can be used in PvP, like let's say we added the Karasi to a PVM boss, it inevitably is going to affect PvP as well. So sometimes it's hard to draw the line, and we need to be, we need to think very carefully about how we choose what restrictions we add to specific polls versus other polls. Maybe it's by question, maybe it's by poll. There's a lot to answer, and we would want to understand, obviously, how to draw those boundaries correctly. So that's something we'd probably want deeper insight on.
Yeah. I also saw a proposal to try and recognise players who had, so that, for example, the people who have all the XP in game can't gain any experience anymore. So things like maybe if you had a max cape or a skill cape or something like that, you're considered a skiller and stuff like that, like because you've done that work. So that you obviously want, or if you've got infernal cape or something, you're considered a PVMer always, and you don't always have to engage in that content. So obviously these are just suggestions that we've been talking about internally, but we'd have to have things like that, because obviously some people have already put in the work and don't need to continually prove it because their account will already prove it for them.
Yeah, that's a good consideration. But yeah, I'm not sure if, like, I know a lot of people are actually for Karasi, but I'm just using it as an example of something that could come from PVM but would have absolutely a big effect on PvP. As for monthly blog, this is really early on still, but with even some people in the team don't actually know yet.
Huh.
But
Surprise.
Going back to 2.5 years ago now, Old School used to do a monthly post at the start of every month called The Month Ahead. And it was sort of like a behind the scenes article for Old School. It told you what was coming out in that month. And it's been a long time now. It was sort of stopped because it was obvious what was coming out. We were doing polls, everything was in the poll that was coming out. And sometimes we didn't know yet. But Old School's grown an awful lot. It's 2 years later now, the team's much bigger. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and it feels like we just don't communicate enough about some of these topics. And this gives us doing a monthly post gives us a really good platform which, all the player base can look forward to and look to expect every single month, where we can talk and give insights about more than what's just coming out in the next month, but about just a monthly publication of this is what's going on in Old School right now. And it includes insights from developers behind the scenes into what's coming up. It rightfully will probably include some insight into the upcoming schedule, but also looking a bit beyond that as well and giving status updates on big topics. So I think there's a lot of use for something like this. And we're just putting sort of the initial steps together now to kick that project really off and going. We did some initial sits downs to work out what should go in it, what shouldn't go in it, and that sort of thing. So I'm excited, and as Sween points out, we're aiming for the first one to be mid-December. So we're sort of aiming for like middle of the month each month to do this sort of thing.
Yeah, so less month ahead and more, this is happening.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the month. Surprise.
It's more like a monthly newsletter
Yeah,
than
pretty
it is
much, which we
a,
do
is a
with-
month ahead.
We do via email, but due to the nature of the email send, it's much shorter and doesn't get into that level of detail we want to. So we were kind of looking at the way we announce leagues, and for that was a bit of a surprise to lots of players, and we didn't want it to be. We wanted people to be involved from the beginning, but we didn't really have a good platform to have that discussion. Similarly, we talked about all the different things that we're considering and discussing in terms of polling. Like, we're not ignoring it, but again, there needs to be a good platform to share the type of discussion that's happening internally, and we think this kind of monthly blog is the right platform for it. Okay, moving on, more questions. I've got some questions about leagues, if I could steal some of your time. So quite a few here from one player. Any chance of getting more ploughs in the field, since only one can be used by one player at a time? So thinking about early game meta there.
So the thing to remember about things like mapping down stuff is if we do that, it affects everything. We can't really have a long-term strategy that has more plows in only League Worlds. That might not be a problem, right? It's plowing in the main game. I'm sure people wouldn't mind that. But I know that I've heard a lot of questions like this. This activity will be packed. This one will be really bad. And the answer is that we just have to take that into consideration with the League Worlds to make sure it's not as bad as people think it is, right? We can control it by having more worlds. And I think that there's a little bit of beauty to the game mode in that because it's limited time, you have to evaluate how packed is that specific activity that might be really good points going to be, because that impacts how many points you get from it, right? How long it takes to complete that task. So I do want there to be an element of that, but if it's literally like people are forming queues for plows, I'm sure we'll come up with a hot fixable solution to be able to change that.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on how many worlds there are, how packed they are, and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
we could spin up more worlds if we think it needs it.
Yeah.
So yeah, some more questions about specific game content. I'm wondering now if it's better suited for like a league's blog, but I'll ask them. Can we get a definite answer on barb fishing rods being available in the shop, or do they have to get it with mulch pearls? If they do have to get it with pearls, will the cost be changed, or will the pearl rate be higher?
You want to take this one?
It just so happens they are in the fishing shops,
Ooh.
and you can buy them with pearls as well.
Yeah, you get the pearl barbarian rod from pearls, naturally. Yeah.
Lovely. Will the construction skill cape be the only accessible skill cape?
Yes, in its existing form. We've had internal discussions about do we just allow skill capes cosmetically, and disable the perks, which might be a lot of work, and the only reason would be for people to show it off. It would still have the stats of like the cape and stuff, but just maybe have the perks disabled. Yes, we can do that. I'm not opposed to it. I think at this point it's a nice to have and not like we might rush to get that out for release. It depends what we've got to do. I'd rather, if time requires, spend more time balancing than doing something like that, personally. But if time allows, sure. I think it's just a bigger job than people realize because we want to disable the perks and stuff. I know specifically there was one, like, if that one crazy person does max in leagues, should we just give them the max cape, like, cosmetically? And yeah, I've said, again, it's, do we do the dev work for that one person, if it's one person that does it, that sort of thing.
Cool.
That's kind of a blurb of my general thoughts, no commitment there.
That's good. So we've got 15 minutes left, and what I want to do is race through as much questions as possible, because I'm quite conscious that we haven't really covered many. But before I do that, so that was like a false lead there. Mod John, could you run us through all the Twisted League rewards, please? So the Twisted League poll was active recently, and we're going to show you the rewards that passed the poll. So here is the league outfit, which passed. I should have brought the percentages with me, but I didn't, but they did pass.
So to give context, if people don't know how these rewards are going to be offered,
Yep.
basically you earn points in the Twisted League, and those points are essentially transferred to your main game save, and there'll be a shop after the league is finished to be able to spend those points on these rewards, and there'll be a number of points obviously in cost per item.
So what you're looking at on screen right now is just a cosmetic outfit for the league. The one on the left is the low tier outfit. It'll cost, let's say, a relatively low amount of points. The one on the right is the mid tier version. It'll cost even more. And then the middle one is the high tier version, and it's going to be an exponential amount of points for them as they go. These will be tradable and I believe storable in the POH is what I would
Cool.
said.
Could you show us the next one, please, Mod John? So this is a still from the the Xerix home teleport animation. Similarly, it'll be a reward in the shop.
Yeah. So
The next one. This is the Twisted League banner. And the next one, the Twisted League trophies you'll be able to get. So these ones are the untradeable, I believe.
yes.
So I've seen lots of questions regarding if leagues isn't a success and we want to stop doing leagues, these are untradeable. essentially created like a discontinued item. So we've already kind of covered this, which is if leagues is to stop for whatever reason, we will make sure these are available elsewhere. We don't want to create like untradeable or tradable discontinued items. Okay, next image. So this is the Twisted League's player-owned house wall kit. And I think that's the last of them. Oh, here we are, the Slayer helm. Looks very cool.
Yep.
So all of these awards passed the poll, and the Ancestral kit didn't pass, so it won't be added to the game. But I believe you had something you want to quickly say about that.
Yeah, so I remember last week when I saw a few people were quite disappointed about that and saying, "Oh, can Jagex just repoll it and get it to pass by changing it some way?" And I guess the question is, what needs to be changed? I don't know. Is it people didn't like the color? Is it that people didn't like it came from leagues? Is it the fact it was a recolor of a best in slot item? Would it have passed if it was untradeable? There's so many different parameters that's just really hard to know exactly what to repoll. But I know there was appetite for it. It was quite close. I think it was like 73.9, maybe 74-ish. It was kind of on that threshold there. One of the most common bits of feedback I saw was, can we add it to the actual in-game, right? An in-game way to get this one, particularly because it is a best-in-slot recolor. Whether that's clue scrolls, whether that's a rare drop from raids itself, I'm not sure, but that's something that I've at least had thoughts about and want to speak to people internally once Leagues has passed, because that's my current priority, obviously, with it going out in a couple of weeks now.
So similarly to how Dagon High was polled with warding, but that failed, we then looked at adding Dagon High in a separate way. We could do the same with the Ancestral recolor, since that had a quite positive reception to it.
Yeah.
Cool. Next, moving on with the questions. Could we get more bank tabs? Bank space can stay the same. How about an extra row of tabs for better organisation? Is that possible?
I don't see why it wouldn't be. It's just about the interface design.
Okay.
About obviously because the tabs are that wide right now, because that's the space that's the width of an item. That's how many fit. So if there's a nice interface way to design that, like a second row, that's probably going to take up some of your space on your actual bank display. But if you do have that many tabs, maybe we could. Or maybe you have little arrows that scroll it right and left. I mean, that'd be quite nasty to actually use if you had more than that tabs. But yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Not a trivial job either when you're doing interface work on the bank. There's a lot there. So.
But obviously the bank is very, very widely used, probably the most popular interface in the game,
absolutely.
so it could be worth it if it's what the players want. How about some not needed but would be cool features in clans? It'd be really neat if we could set up competitions like Skill of the Week and have it tracked in old school. A lot of PVM clans have bingo events where you and your team go after certain drops. Those kind of things. He has no idea how making teams within a clan would work or setting up the competitions would work, but could we consider those types of things?
I've wanted to do official bingo for ages. I pitched it at the team pitching session, and everyone was like, "Oh, don't see the point." Everyone was like, "Bingo isn't a good idea," and I was like, "This is so good. We need official bingo," because it is something clans have been playing with quite a lot. So, but I'm quite keen myself. But it's just bingo is such a fun concept, and for those who don't know, in clans, people put little bingo cards together, like a 5x5 grid, and if you get a full row, you score points. And people will get in teams and try and score as many items as they can. And so things on the bingo card might be get a pet, or get a drop from bandos, get a dragon hunter lance, stuff like that. And the team will have like a week to go and get as many as they can. So I've been thinking about like how could we do this in a more official capacity. Something maybe every now and then, like every month or 2 months, we put up a card for a week which has 25 things on it, and people can sign up to play as in groups, and we'll see how many points you get, and give something to the winner or something. And if it's something we do every 2 months, then we can just give some in-game nice reward or something. Similarly, giving, when we do have clans, the ability for clans to spin up their own versions, that sort of thing. But yeah, and then you could do it in an official sense that you can tick off the events, obviously ourselves, because we can track it in game and say, well done, you've got that item, tick it off. And so, yeah, I think there's potential there.
We did look at doing something like that, I remember, a couple months ago, or maybe even longer. I think it was one of the 07 subreddit mods I was talking to. The issue is because we're not necessarily tracking, unless we have like back-end tracking for each of the things on the bingo card, it's very much an honor system. And if we're introducing like rewards or prizes for that kind of thing, we can't necessarily guarantee people are going to be completely honest with
which is why it needs,
what they've got, right?
It needs to be a proper in-game feature.
But I think if we had, once we've got the proper clan system in place, and if we had tracking to each of the things, then it's totally doable, right? And that would be a really, really nice feature to have.
That'd be really cool. The other part was like skilling things. So like every
skill of the week and stuff, which is quite common for clans to do. They'd say, you know, skill of the week this week is agility. Whoever gets the most agility XP from the start to finish.
That could be cool.
So I think, yeah, so the player mentions like these not needed but would be cool. I disagree. I think these kind of things, like really empowering clans with their own tools rather than relying on us, is the best way to go about it.
Clans are communities, and giving the communities the ability to run community events is absolutely, to me, the core part of them. I mean, I think people who engage with this game the most and really do buy into old school as a whole are the people who end up actually getting into communities and get into discords, and you know, there's so much going on that there's always something interesting to do. And it adds a lot of depth to the game, which is pretty awesome, really. Another bingo suggestion that I was thinking about was to do early game bingo. So you started on fresh accounts, and you'd be Iron Man, and you'd generate a bingo card the usual way, but it would be 25 items you had to obtain, and it would be a race to obtain them as fast as you could at the start of the game. So you might get a card that's got like a nature rune, a raw trout, you know, that sort of thing for 25 items. You start on a fresh account and you've got a race to get them as fast as you can, and come up with a strategy ad hoc based on the 25 items that have come up. I think that's cool.
I second the many people in the chat which thinks it sounds a bit like leagues. Moving on.
That'd be like a 5-6 hour sort of session.
Yeah, like a smaller scale thing. So in recent Q&As and even internally, we've seen some progress with it. We've talked about locking Zulrah behind completion of Song of the Elves, but a player offers this suggestion. So instead of locking Zulrah behind completion of Song of the Elves, how about locking farming Zulrah behind completion? So almost scaling it, so until you finish Song of the Elves, maybe you have to wait a certain amount of time after a successful kill before entering the lair again, that kind of stuff. So that way lower levels can still engage with it. If they're Ultimate Iron Man can still use the death mechanic for items, which I personally don't really agree with. You can get the diary task done before finishing the entire elf quest line, that kind of thing. Personally, more in favour of the complete lock, which Mod Ed has kind of almost prototyped in game, offers some really cool lore reasoning behind it. What do you guys think?
I understand why the player's asking for it. It is annoying, especially for the hard diary, which obviously has got Elite Void locked behind it and that kind of thing. It's annoying to have to add an extra, well, pretty sizable requirement for
honestly, if it was behind Song of the Elves, I would say we need to move it off that diary.
Yeah, because it's just adding a bit too much. And I think otherwise, yeah, any kind of method of letting the player get one kill for their diary and then locking it, it would be kind of a bit weird and messy, a bit arbitrary. So yeah, either take it off the diary or...
if you don't move it off the diary, you're locking the hard diary behind a bunch of 70-odd stats, aren't you, for that quest?
It could just be moved to the Elite diary, I suppose.
Yeah, you could move it to the Elite diary.
I personally don't like the sort of daily lock, like maybe you do 5 a day and that's your thing. I think the whole boss was kind of balanced around that idea of being, like, there's so many dynamics that change between, like, is the pet rate okay? I know you could just undo Song of the Elves and change that, right? But is the pet rate okay? Or I feel like that's a decision that might have been easier to make before it was launched for the whole balancing of everything on it.
Thing is, this is a big change. Absolutely is. Like, Song of the Elves is a much harder requirement than what Ice got currently. So I'm interested in what the community think, because it is one of those hard topics where it's essentially a nerf to something that people obviously have used without doing Song of the Elves. Maybe there's a midpoint that you'd prefer, like just being after the finish of Register, maybe after Morning's End Part 2, something like that, so it's a little less harsh, but yeah.
I see a comment in chat, One Defense Purists can do Song of the Elves, right? So they're not locked out of it. I'm pretty sure we took Fairy Tale Part 2 off there, so they can.
Yeah, we did pre-release.
So, yeah, I guess for my personal thing, I think blocking it behind Song of the Elves, I'm personally in favour of that. I just don't think a temporary soft lock is the right way to go about it, which is the question.
But if we do it, expect us to do what we did at the start of last year, when we had like a big swath of proposals for game integrity changes, and then you have a chance to offer your feedback before we enact any changes like that. Next question is, will there ever be a new name release? So this kind of came up in last week's Old School Offsite, Mod Kieran, where we were kind of looking at what challenges a new player or a returning player might face. And one of them is, I guess, the inability to set the name that you want to, because there are so many RuneScape accounts out there that they've already taken the name you want. So what I understand from the last time there was a name release, that the name release is a lot of very hard work, very time consuming for a lot of people around the business. So I'd be very interested in getting the conversation going about how we might almost automate the edit. So instead of it having to all be manually pushed live for new names to come out, it just happens according to how long said name has been inactive, that kind of thing. So expect us to query it. I'm not promising it will happen. There was a lot of resistance to it last time, in repeating it, purely because of how detrimental it was because of the day-to-day running of the business. But yeah, we'll query it.
It's not necessarily as straightforward as it sounds either. So the problem with, for example, having it happen automatically at every set amount of time, you just set names up for being sniped. Just as soon as they become active by bots. So we have to be maybe a bit more clever about the way we release names like that.
I think the issue isn't being clever about releasing names, but more about how people choose them. So the web authentication requirement, so now you need authenticator to log into the website. That would hopefully make it easier for us to prevent name sniping. We'd have to do something on account creation as well. But yeah, we'll look into it. Okay, so someone says sire changes have been polled, and then offers a ton of other things that they want polled as well. So when can we expect grotesque changes to be polled as well? Can the Sarachnis stun attack frequency be greatly lowered? As a max main, I shouldn't get stunned more than twice during the span of the fight. On the same note, can Bryophyte's growthlings be given a timer? There's no reason for it to be able to spawn them back to back without taking damage between spawns. Why aren't Tsar on Konar's assignment list when Avian Z's and Bastards are? All 3 tasks required to be unlocked only exist in one location. And then as a side note, do JMods get to do home office once a week? Companies I know started that policy, had great results.
Try to do what, sorry? Home.
Can work from home, so they called it home office.
What was the first part of that question? I guess there's a lot of points there.
Cool, so
That last one was massively different to the rest of it.
yeah,
Was it the Grotesque Guardian?
Grotesque Guardian changes, yeah.
Yeah, I actually spent a bit of time with Gambit looking at some of the popular requests for Grotesque Guardians. I think one of the things we identified is, obviously, it's supposed to be a low-level boss, but you can kill things like Vorkath faster, right? And it's because there's a lot of dead time in phase transitions, and I don't know when we would have... The question is always the time to do them, and evaluating whether it's worth doing it long run for the game and stuff. I personally would like to, and I think we might. I was pitching if we remove one of those phase transitions. So maybe you just go straight from Dusk the flying, no, Dawn the flying one to Dusk the melee one with no phase transition, but then a phase transition happens then, and then you go through and do the kill her. Not going to bother getting the names right. You kill her, then he absorbs the power and it goes through, and even that would knock off like 15-20 seconds, I think, of the time. I think, what was it, 15 seconds we said?
Something, it was around that.
So yeah, that would make a big difference to the average time straight up, and then maybe even the transitions can be slightly shorter and start off really hectic as opposed to ramping up to that point. There's things I'd definitely like to do because I don't think it's a problem if a high-level player can kill a mid-level boss quickly with the gear to do it. Because I know if you're high enough range gear specifically, you can just dodge the whole healing thing by just out-damaging it, and I think that's fine, but there's lots of things to consider. And if you guys have like a lot of suggestions that you think would help the problem, which I think is that the average time is too slow, send us them. Obviously we could just reduce the health, but I don't think that's the, let's say, the phase transitions are the problem, not the health. The next one was Sarachnis.
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing at how the chat took the submitters' weird flex about being a max main, and I think somebody said, "Please nerf Sarachnis because I am max main."
Yeah.
Talking about the stun attack frequency, just the stun attack.
Yeah. So I was thinking of a few ways when I was designing this. Do I want the stun attack to be dodgeable? Because if there was when it got released, you could use an elemental shield to dodge it, and that was when I looked into why. We found out that was because I'd coded it in a way I shouldn't have. So I fixed it on a case of, like, I should learn that, not to do that, here's why it should never have worked that way, and mostly because I didn't intend it to. We could maybe open a way for you to dodge it. I think I initially had a thought, which was maybe the higher your agility level, you have a chance to just straight up dodge it, which would be an interesting mechanic for a boss I don't think we've got. But the point of it was for a low-level player to understand, and most people will figure out how the fight works anyway. She is very predictable in that when she's far away from you, she ranges you, and when she's close, she melees you. So that stun is her chance to kite and get away, and the player then goes, right, now I have to change to range for a tick, or however long, then back to melee and come back. But I can understand why that would be annoying for max players. It's just that, like, do I allow that, do I not, for a way to dodge it?
It's another symptom of this issue where we made a boss, well, you really made a boss, aimed at sort of mid-level players, basically, not high-level players. And it really is designed in such a way that encourages you to learn bossing, get your switches in at the right time, learn your timing and your movements. It's not designed to be destroyed in a few seconds by someone with a scythe. Obviously you can, but it's not really the point.
Somebody does point out, why do we have to give a pet to it then? I see that quite a lot in the chat.
I think it felt like the boss should have a pet. I can't describe it more than that, and I explained it to the team, like the mole has a pet, so it's definitely a bit harder than the mole to kill, mechanically at least. There are a lot of easier bosses out there that have them. It just felt like it should have one. I can't really describe it more than that. And a lot of players when we pitched the idea, it was always like, let's look at the community feedback. We say it's going to have a pet. The overwhelming feedback was, yes, I'd want a pet for this. Can it please have a pet? A lot of people asking this question, and that kind of helped influence that decision.
Okay.
I definitely think, going back to the original question, we can reduce the rate that she does it. I know it's unpredictable. I think she essentially has a cooldown that happens after, I can't remember the time, and then she has a chance to do an attack, so it's not even predictable. So we could just make that cooldown slightly longer. But yeah, as Gambit said, the idea was it's one style only, but you have to focus on prayers and standing in the right places so you have less distance to run to the boss. You can purposely only ever get one range attack if you're on the right tiles at certain times. Like that was all mapped out, so I don't want to just straight up remove the stun.
Okay. So there are other questions from the player, but as we're past 6 now, and I kind of want to clarify the announcements at the beginning, talk a bit about third-party clients, we will roll those questions over to next week. So to go way back to the start, we spoke about account security. So last week we published a blog, talked about why we're so behind, mainly because we've been under quite sustained login server attacks, but also what changes we're going to make, like the implementation of backup codes and stuff. And then, so earlier today, we also published a revised statement on third-party clients. The intention of this blog is not to almost punish you or fearmonger into like scaring that we're going to ban you for using X feature, X plugin, and so on. We wanted to offer more clarity. It seems like there's lots more questions have been raised, so we will offer that clarity, especially around stuff like manual tile marking versus automatic visual markers, the Cerberus plugin affecting colorblind players, menu entry swapping for banking and Leprechaun, hiding the defense option to prevent unwanted defense XP. So yeah, we're seeing you query those types of features, and we will offer that clarity as soon as possible. I think that's all I got to say on that. Anybody else want to chime in?
No, that's about it. I saw a player actually asking in the chat earlier, what kind of educational qualifications do I need to work at Jagex? The best place to find out is jagex.com/careers if you are interested in that. I do go through the listings from time to time just to see what's there and see what is required for roles just out of interest. And typically I don't think we ask for specific degrees or anything like that for most of the time. Usually it's experience based. But
yeah,
do have a look
stuff like degrees obviously just help give you a better chance. At least it's proof of something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like there's any strict requirements that you need this and need this. It's all just adding. You got all these things. This is great, sort of thing.
At least I felt like my degree helped me get the job, at least for the skills I learned actually coding. I mean, when you get here for your trial day, at least it was very much, we're finding out if you can do the job. And if you can't, well, F.
Just before we wrap up, I see a question in the chat as well. So the rewards transfer system from leagues, could that be applied to Deadman if we were to bring Deadman back, or have like a Deadman theme league? So that is your performance rewarding you in the main game with some sort of shop, or even transferring stuff over from, like, say, Deadman to permanent Deadman. Could that system be used?
Yes, the system I believe was created for leagues. It wasn't available at the time.
Yep.
So absolutely, if we ever do something of the like again, that same reward system can definitely be extended.
Cool. Awesome to know. Right, that's all we've got time for this week, but we'll be back next Wednesday as well with more questions to answer. Thank you very much for joining us. See you next week. Goodbye.